Hi, I'm Toby Jones, and I'm going to paint a beach for you. My URL is tobyjonesart.com. Okay, I'm going to mix up some colors on this yellow palette I've got here. Start with some white. These are acrylics Liquitex colors, the basics. The pigments aren't quite as good as the professional brands and the smaller tubes, but these are effective for what we're going to do here. We're going to mix primary colors to get a wide variety of blues and greens and yellows to make the teal water. So I'm going to go ahead and wet this canvas down a little bit to make the colors slide on easily. Got a little too much, so I'll pad that off with a paper towel. I want to get it kind of even without getting too wet because I don't want to warp the canvas or make the stretcher boards warp. This is a regular 14 by 11 stretched canvas. It's about 3/4 inch thick. I'm going to start with a little blue mixed into the white, and then add some little touches of red just so it's not straight blue and I get some purple variation in there. I'm going to go ahead and mix a little variety of blues on the palette here. I'll go ahead and add a little bit of this. This is burnt sienna. And I'll use that to gray down my colors a little bit there and create a variation. You don't want to use all bright hues in your clouds and natural settings, so this burnt sienna grays out your colors, and then you can use your bright colors and hues for highlight areas. These are going to be clouds, is what we're getting ready to make here. So I imagine then we'll need some darker under parts to make cloud shadows and places where the cloud condensation is thicker. And then we'll have lighter colors mixed in. Just got a flat-ended brush here. It's about 3/4 inch wide. I'm just going to use it to get some paint coverage on this top layer, on this bottom layer. This is a little bit gray for sky, but we're going to come back over it with more blues later and get some layers of color in there. I'm just going to brush this on and smooth it out up here in what's going to be the sky area. A lot of times you'll start to see the cloud forms and imagine where they might be just in the smeared thin paint. I'm thinking the horizon about halfway down on this one. It's something to consider when you first start your scene. If you have a high horizon, you'll have a lot more ground to cover. If you have interesting things on the ground, you might want to do that if you have a lot of seashells. Uh, and if you want to have a lot of things in the sky and open the space, you lower the horizon and things appear more eye level. I'm just going to stretch some of this blue right up into the sky and get some nice gradients going here, like you might see in the naturally cloudy day. It's more common to have whites on the horizon and bluer skies going up, but it's not always that way. It's more common to see that because we see all that water in the air. Uh, it's denser from when we look from a lower view. We're seeing more of it. Just dabbling some whites in here to create little highlighted peaks and places where the cloud might be extra fluffy or thick. These are areas where the cloud will be a little closer. It might have more of a distinct form. Whereas the far off clouds, like the horizon clouds, are just a mash of everything off into the distance. They blur together. You can start to see some ridges form here where look like they'd be good cloud edges. Stabbing the brush around. And just throwing this sky blue color in here creates those edges and really brings them out. And I'll just keep dabbing it around with pretty thin paint to make it look soft and fluffy like that. If my paints were thick there, it's not going to look fluffy. It's going to look hard and with ridges. So what's happened here is we've added a little yellow and just smeared in a little more at the bottom to start a horizon line. Just going to grab some more of that same blue color we had mixed up for the sky, and we've added just a little bit of yellow in there to yellow it out and create that teal color. We're going to lighten that up a little bit just to create some depth in the scene and have like faded colors in the back, and then they get more crisp and vivid as we come forward. And you can see that horizon starting to form where the sky meets the sea. This is a pretty common way I like to start a beach painting. Have that blue color from the sky and get some clouds and things going, and just add a little more coming down, and then increase the hues in the color to make them brighter and brighter with a little bit more yellow. And it'll add the teal and eventually become greener as we get shallower and come right onto the beach. This is getting really green now. This might be a little too much yellow, but maybe this will just be the face of a wave or something here that's much closer. And just blend that in, and we'll add some little ripples and waveforms in here with a detail brush in the next step. I'm just trying to get a base color down here and get an idea of where our main sections of the painting are going to be, our water line and our horizon, maybe some waveforms and a cloud ridge. I don't really have a sketch on this one. We're just kind of freestyling it. A little dark color in here I'll use to create maybe some edges and lines for the shore breakwaters. That area is going to be a little choppier than the waters just offshore, and the places where the water's smoothed out. We're going to have this foamy area, this ocean washy area in the front here where the seashells are. What I like to do in here is get some nice gradients going and then come back in with lots of variations of blues and teals and just dabble them in like the light might naturally make on blue water with different depths of blues and teals in the natural water. And add a little red in here and get us some more purples going. This is going to make our contrast colors over that lighter teal we've made with the yellow. Let's go ahead and start adding some sand in here. I've got all that red. Got a little extra red on the brush, and we'll just wipe it off here instead of wasting it or letting it dry up. These acrylics dry so fast, sometimes it's good to take advantage of an opportunity like that to get a little extra red on the brush or whatever. We'll just wipe it off here where it might come in handy later. Uh, this definitely looks like the right sand color. I'm going to use a real muted tone here, uh, nothing too bright. Like beach sand, just really a background thing, and then we're going to decorate it with shells and ridges and little divots and things like that. Sea foam. The colors go a long way in a beach painting. if your colors are realistic, it's easy for people's brain to automatically feel like the colors are uh, real, and it's easy to accept the painting as a realistic image if the colors are right, even if the lines and forms aren't quite perfect. Those colors will really help sell it. Having a lot of variation across the surface of the picture really helps uh, give it a more realistic look too. You don't want to have any areas of one solid color anywhere. And well, not for this style of painting anyway. Got a brush here with the tip of it's a little roughed up, and I'm just gonna smear some shallow water around here. I've got a flat headed brush here. What I'm trying to do is just get some smeary patterns in there that are shaped maybe like the shore break waters might be, or you might see that shallow skim water washing in. It's partially reflective, and then through some parts you might see the sand underneath. Yeah, that's too green for what we need here. And blue it up a little, maybe purple it up. Sometimes when you get good teal water, the more yellow it is and it comes over the orange rocks, you can get this purpley color. I guess that'd be the blue and the red in the rocks that give that color. The coquina shells. Okay, we'll just blend it out here though and get a nice smooth sand gradient. Just kind of keep blending till it feels right. And tidy up the shoreline edge. I'm just gonna add some darker blues in here to try to simulate maybe some reflections, some sky reflections on the wet sand here. And white might look like little ripples of shallow water across there. That's what I'm hoping for, is to pull the brush across there and get that perfect streaky look. It's kind of hard to see from this backed up camera position, but we're going to add some edges to it. So some white and some darks here that really make these edges pop out, and it's going to make that look a lot more reflective than it is now. I'm just trying to get a little more of this white, really lightish purple in here, so that it could be reflections from those clouds up above. Some of that color down here. And since I've got the camera square onto the painting, you'll see me occasionally dip over and try to see it from the center. That's why I keep kind of leaning in to get a better view of it, because I'm making room for the camera. I'm just gonna add a little more white down here because I kind of imagine this being like sugar sand and really soft powdery sand. Usually that's a little lighter, and it leads down into the coquina and darker sand. can drag the remainder of that paint across here just to give a little more of a blend. It's easy to neglect one side of the painting when you're leaning to one side like that. It's also a good idea to mark your horizons and be centered when you first start off, and you might want to measure that horizon even. It's easy to draw a skewed one or crooked one. I guess this little line here will serve as the shore break. Just adjust that camera a little and try to get more square focused on that. You can imagine a little wave has rolled in here and maybe one behind it. A mistake, we can always come back and add color, add more blues over these or whatever, but if not, we'll just wiggle the brush through here and see if we can get good seafoam to appear. If you get all your colors just right and you've got the right brush, it's about the right size. It's usually a flat brush. Uh, this one's about a 1/4 inch thin flat, and you can get that wiggle motion going. This seafoam makes itself sometimes, and it can be kind of fun. I'm trying to leave it uneven here and just highlight some areas and leave some lighter and darker to make it look realistic. That's how the light might fall in a natural scene here and there. It won't be like one solid white color. You can see from a distance here how certain areas of the shore break pop out now, even with the camera a little out of focus. Sometimes if I take a short break with these acrylics, you'll see I cover the tray with a piece of plastic to keep the paints fresh if I have some colors that I want to keep using. And go up and make some darker colors here. A little more bluish white. With the seafoam, that's usually the formula. I go with this a little bit of bluish white and a little bit of tannish white, maybe a little purplish, just really subtle variations of white, and then dabble those into the shore break. Preferably, hopefully with a brush that's it's rough on the end and bristly, and it'll create a random pattern of seafoam. What you can do is take like a straight new brush and you can smash up the end of it and get a good random pattern there that'll make the seafoam look randomized, like it's splashing in all directions. Even with these like little dabs. If you just use a square brush, you'll get a perfect little square there. But if you got an uneven rough brush, you can get these uh, more natural patterns. It's okay to leave some areas thick and clumpy, and some can be thin. That's how a wave might break. They don't all break perfect and even. Once we start putting these lines of wave and surf in here, it starts to get easy to imagine shadows and where highlights and streaks and foams would be. Now that we have this big wave here right in the center. That yellow gradient we built on the way down gives us that illusion of some translucent water. We might be seeing sand underneath. And now we'll just dabble in little bits of uh, the white variations under there to make it look more realistic and foamy. Maybe we'll have a little second shore break down here somewhere. Really can change the mood of your beach, depending on how much and where your foam is placed. If you make tall foam and lots of it, it's windy and more violent and more intense. And if you make these little shorter waves and they're evenly spaced and relatively calm. It's more of a tranquil, peaceful scene. I think that's what we're going for here is maybe a peaceful, happy kind of scene, a tranquil beach. Maybe now for a little balance, we'll bring some little shore break over here on the right side. Another thing to think about when we're positioning where these waves might be is you don't want to put all your visual activity and action going on in one area of the painting and leave one side without anything going on. And you don't want to have any boring areas. Even if there's not seafoam over there, maybe there's a ridge or some rolling water or some other something there to make it interesting. I've added a little water to the brush to freshen up this paint a little bit. The acrylic paint dries up pretty fast. You can buy some stuff to make it last a little longer, but I'm not using that now. Just gonna come in here with a little white on here and add some detail, a little lip on this wave. Then I'll come back in later and add a little shading under that to give it a more 3D effect and make it pop out. And here I'm just adding a little back whitewash behind where the leaves a little foamy trail in the water. You don't want it to be solid white, but maybe fade back into the blue. And a little bit in front too, make the water look more reflective to put little dabs of this white in the front of the break. Really, it's good to just put little dabs of everything on your palette out in the water there without losing the base color. That's the thing is you don't want to cover up the base gradient, but you want to add variations and little places where the water's changed direction and creates ripples on the surface. Just gonna add some little highlights in here in the white water. It's just another shade of mixed with white that's been left pretty bright. Just a little bit of blue mixed in. It'll create contrast with those other tones of white we made earlier with their sienna and light purple. I'll just go in here and wiggle the brush on top of the waves. Make little wavy patterns. And I've got this paint's thinned down a lot where it doesn't cover up the paint underneath completely. It blends in and retains some of the underneath color. That's a good way to get the watery effect is layer on these similar colors with little wavy patterns. And that's what's going on when I'm wiggling that brush like that. And here we're adding some foam in here and dragging it back. Usually start off with a little thicker piece of foam at the front and then wiggle it back and create finer and smaller pieces as I go backward. And it creates that space illusion of a flat surface going back into the distance. And we'll bring that out a little more when we add shading under the waves and the foam. You can kind of see in that front break there's a little shading there already and it makes it pop out like 3D. I'm just going to add a few little streaks in here, like as if some foam's getting pulled up onto a vertical surface. That's a good way to use this sea foam, is to sketch out a surface contour with it and then show it rise up when you get to that vertical part. You don't want to overdo it. Just put a few of these in there is enough to hint what's going on, and let that darker color be the ridge line for your wave. I mean, if you have a foamy beach on a windy day, you know, there'd be more foam. There's some days where it's totally white, I guess, with just little streaks dark here and there. A totally washed out day. I got some, this white I'm using now is pretty watery. I've got a lot of water added to it. It makes it easy to slide around and drag without covering up my underneath color here. Just kind of looking around to look for spots that might need a little touch up here or there. If something doesn't look that good, maybe cover it up. Just going to add a little more foam up here in the wet sand area. Give it a little form, a little surface contour. Something to make this area look 3D is like to have like these bigger loops and swirls up front, and then make the loops and swirls smaller. You know, as we recede back, they get smaller and less defined with thinner edges. And up front, they might be more thick and robust. It's good to try and save all the thick strokes for the final layers. You know, you don't want to paint anything too thick early, because then it's hard to fix it later. That ridge will stay there if you leave thick paint on the canvas early on. We'll probably add some more layers on top of this, get good color profile. And just adding little squiggles here and there. Trying to use generally the same pattern, but not identical. You might see even the ocean swirling around. There's parts I don't like, we'll just create maybe a new little break right there. Add some new foam. Change up that brush and just get a different shade of that white. Just add more variations in the foam here. Just make it more colorful and more realistic. think that's what makes the foam good, is having lots of variations and not too much of the same color in there. Just very subtle variations of white, blue, white sienna, white, purple. I'm using that ragged end brush again just to tap lightly near the top to create these random little splash patterns. And just holding the brush at an angle just to touch like maybe the corner of the flat surface. It's not perfectly flat. It's been ruffled up. You can see a close-up shot of what I'm talking about there, and there's a still video linked in the video description to the brushes and the paints used, and you can see the actual brush used up close there. You can add a little detail in here with a finer tip brush. Bring that lip out. You can add a little red to some of this blue, and now I'm going to go ahead and make a dark purple in here to add some underlining. This also makes that white foam pop out, that surf foam. And you can see I've added that right under the main break and a little more uh, under some of the other foam there. You can see how it pops out from a distance. There's probably a little too much there though. I'm probably going to need to go in there and dabble some more layers over that. You, you can see how under where the wave breaks, there's a shattered lip there. I'm going to add a little more bluish color, and then go in here and add some details to the sky and make it a little more interesting. It's a little white and boring right now. I'm going to mix up my sky color. Just keep dabbling little bits of this blue and white together until it's how I want it. I want it to match that blue in the top right corner where there's a nice cloud ridge formed already. Then I'll just create some more of that in a similar form. Maybe darken it in a little bit too. Give it more contrast. Yeah, that's good contrast. That's really brings out the top cloud too. And I'll just go ahead and rub this around. I've got the round ended brush now. It's a firm round ended brush. It's also pictured in the brush videos. And you can see I can just wiggle this around and make sure to leave a few spots, and I can get some nice cloud forms in here. And then sort of like what we did with the foam, we'll have these shapes get smaller as they go back in the distance and have the big cloud forms up front. What I'm doing, I'm adding a little white now to create some highlights on the spots that are going to get left in here. Probably the main pattern going on in this painting is adding small layers of subtle color change onto the previous color until we get nice 3D forms. One thing that's important here, I can grab some of the straight white, I just have to be careful not to push too much of it into one place. Get it out. If you just put too much color in one place, it's going to flatten out the image. I generally save this pure white for the last layers if used at all. And I think the sky's probably getting close. So I'm okay with dabbling more of this pure white in here. I like to try and keep these clouds kind of moving in a similar direction. Not exactly the same, but as if there could be some wind pushing in a similar direction, making these things stretch out and float one way. Like you'll see they're kind of elongated and tilted upward. And there's the two bigger forms have that same form. You can create a little harmony in the picture like that than if you just had random things here and there. The waves kind of do that naturally, with repeating patterns, add harmony to the picture. That's one reason the beaches make such a good subject. We get these repeated forms and patterns. Trying to get a look at it from different sides. It's good to take a look at the painting from up close and far away when you're during the painting, because you can get too focused in on one area and neglect it from another side. Having good lighting really helps with that too. If you have equal lighting on both sides and don't have any shadows on your painting. Just blending down these clouds near the horizon because they're farther away and we won't have as much detail in there. It will just be more of a blend. Maybe a misty horizon. We want that part to be kind of even. It shows the distance from front to back. We want that to be kind of an even fade or transition into blurriness. And add some of this primary yellow here. That's another thing we're doing here is just using these three primary colors: primary red, primary blue, primary yellow, to mix all our colors. I mean, plus the sienna. We could have mixed that too, but it's a lot easier just to use that one out of the tube. You can add some details here. What I've done is added just a little touch of yellow into a larger pile of white there to just offset the white just a little bit. And that's going to give me some contrast highlights here to add on the what I think would be the sunny spots in these clouds. It's going to make it pop out good against those other subtle blues there we have. They're already kind of grayed out from the sienna and the blue. That little bit of yellow mixed in there will give it that glow effect from the sun. Just adding a little that primary red into the white blue mix to get more of a purpley light purpley color. Actually, it's more that bluish sky purple. I'm just going to blend that in to create some gradient up here. Get closer to a natural sky blue. Just create some different layers. Might be more water mist here and there. Using that circular motion to blend everything out and get an even color in that open sky area. Looks like kind of an opening in the clouds there. And then I'll use some more of this the sky blue. By moving the brush back and forth, that flat brush is going to give me patterns in the clouds that are all kind of flowing the same direction. You get these oblong shapes that kind of lean upward to the right. Just by holding my flat brush that way and wiggling that way with the brush. I'll just keep rubbing that blue, creating space where it feels right. If I want to, I can get more white and add it back in there. Just trying to get something that looks interesting. Anytime I get a little extra, I'll just blend it out into the area. You can see we've done that under that big cloud in the center. We've just worked that brush around under there to create all those little shapes and forms there. Like I was saying, wiggle the brush in a similar direction. You'll get all these little patterns in there where you've carved out the sky with that blue color. You got another flat brush here. Looking for the right end. We're going to add a little more wet sand in the front here. Something that looks more reflective than what we got now. We're going to use that to create some reflection effects later. But for now, we'll just get like a kind of a purpley color that's going to give us contrast with light colors. That can be our reflection from the sky onto the wet sand. And just mixing kind of another purple blend here using this primary blue and red. And what I'm trying to do here is just get a purple that's distinct from what I've got in the water. That's a little more red in it. It's a little darker, a little more blue and red and less white. I'm just going to pick a spot here that might be where the wet sand starts. And drag that across with some smooth strokes here. I want this to be kind of even. The paint to be even. They can definitely have a gradient in color. We want to go light to dark on top and some little shimmers and things to make it look wetter too. Nice light purple color there. That would be that blue sky reflected onto like orangey, reddish seashells and coquina. Little white edge on there that might be some sea foam or stuff washed up there. You want to leave a little dark edge there on against that greener water, and that'll create some surface texture there, like as if there's a little ridge of water. Give that water some volume, kind of lit off a little bit. Some nice smooth strokes across here. If it looks too purple, we can add more blue or sienna to bring it closer to the sand color, but I'm okay with this bright purple. I want to exaggerate the colors a little bit in this one. But one thing with mixing these primary colors is they're not quite as bright as the professional grade colors that are, phthalo green and crimson, cadmium red, and these things are used from pure pigments. And some of these student grade colors, like these primaries I'm using here, these colors might change a little bit when they dry, and the pigments aren't always as bright as the professional grade paint. So that's one difference between using these basic student grade paints and the professional grade acrylic paints. But these will work fine for our purposes here. We don't need any specific color. We just want variation. And as long as we have good contrast with our whites and our foam and our shadows, we're going to have a nice painting here. I'm gonna add a couple of seagulls in here. Kind of add something living in here, and something I like to see at the beach is some birds. I don't want to make any, well, though not. We don't want to make letter M birds. I'm gonna put anything to make it a little different and interesting. So we have this little bird up here in the sky. So we got this big flat cloud area that's kind of undecorated. It's a good spot for one to be. We're gonna randomly place one anyway. Why not? Conveniently where this picture could use an interest point. And I'll just make some little wings with the white, or a little bit of off-white really, or purpley white. It doesn't matter. He's off in the distance so far. We don't need a lot of detail, and just take some almost black and make a little beak. Maybe some little tail tips where the seagulls have black feather tips. That's getting a bit overused there. I'll just mix in a little bits of the black and white there onto the edge of the bird wings until it looks right. If I get a little too much, like maybe the feet are a little too big or something, I'll just put a little water and wipe that off. And we'll just try again. That's the benefit of the acrylic paint. Is the underlayer's already so dry that I can just kind of wipe this detail off and do it again. Filming live like this, there's times I have to get up and check the camera and do things like that. Just gonna add another little seagull right down here. Just gonna start with a little belly, little body on him, a little bird-shaped curve, that signature bird shape of a bird on the ground, slightly bent. Maybe we'll have him looking out to sea. And we'll go ahead and just put that little shadow under him there and a little reflection. We've got two birds in here. So we're getting ready to add some seashells now. I'm gonna then cover up all my water and my detail work that I've done so far. We've given it a couple minutes to dry off there. I'm going to use this white trash bag over the dry parts of the painting. I'm going to use this as a guard, so I can fling some paint around. And the reason I want to do that is because it's going to give a nice random pattern. I want to make some seashells down here, and it's going to give a nice random look and be able to give me finer detail than I could get trying to do this with a brush. So I'll take some of this sienna. We'll start with that. I'm going to want a lot of color variety down here in the seashells, but we'll just start with that sienna to get us going. We'll go ahead and get some of this other palette loaded up here. We're going to get us some purples, some reds, and some different colors here. We'll start with the darks. It'll give us an idea of what our scatter pattern is going to look like. You can see it really well with these darks. I've got a bristly brush here that's got pretty good resistance to it. It's going to let me fling pretty well. And I'm going to wet that a little bit. And using more water here is going to give me rounder, finer mist. And the amount of water is important here. If I use too much, it's just going to splash and make a mess. And if there's not enough, it won't really fling off. It'll just stay on the brush and feel sticky. It's good to test your splash before you really do it on the painting. Like on this plate, I'm gonna give it a few test flings here. I'm going to mix up a little variety and get that on the brush. I'm just going to use my finger here and jump right in and use that to cause the spray. I'm just pulling back on the edges of that brush. There's some better ways to do this. You can do this with your palette knife too, but I've just jumped in here with my hands in this case. Just pulling back on that. You can barely see it from here, but you can see some of the splatter hitting the guard up there. I've also left a little bit of that wet sand area hanging down under the painting, and that's going to help give me a nice effect, seeing just little bits of shells laying over into the reflective sand. Lets us know that's really shallow area there. It's not actually water, but sand. I'm going to try and get some different colors in here now that I've got these dark splatters in. Now just mix up some oranges here with this primary yellow and red. I'll have to get this purple out of the brush or it's going to brown out. You know, if we put purple with yellow or any opposite colors, we can't really mix those. Those will turn brown, you know, as soon as they mix. So we kind of have to do these splashes in sessions, and I have to get some fresh water here because the water is too stained. And that's one of the keys to making these seashell splatter that I'm putting on here is having lots of different colors in here and variations of the colors, not just have one. If we just use one color, it won't look like grains or different things at all. I had that random scatter of natural things you see on when seashells wash up at the beach. Random forms and broken shells, sea shells and spirals and things like that.